Good evening and welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time this evening to join us at the annual Dr Ndlovu lecture, which we will be diving into this evening. We want to take this opportunity just to remind everyone who has joined us and is currently streaming in to remain on mute for the duration of the session. And we will run our program between 6 and 7 p.m. this evening. I want to take the opportunity to also welcome our specially invited guests who will be delivering remarks tonight. I'd like to first of all acknowledge our keynote speaker, Professor Thuli Madonsela, who is no stranger to anyone who joins us here tonight from Stellenbosch. I also want to take the opportunity to welcome Prof. Ndlovu, who has also dialed in and will be joining us tonight. I want to also acknowledge our sponsor, Ma'am Shirley Machaba, who has also joined us and will be sharing her remarks. I want to acknowledge the President of the BMF, Mr. Andile Nomlala, as well as the entire Ndlovu family who has dialed in tonight to be part of this session. Bokacheni, we welcome you and we salute you to this occasion, and we want to thank you once again for sharing the great leader that was Mr. Ndlovu with us and with the BMF as we acknowledge and honor him as part of the Trust series this evening. For those of you who need a reminder, the theme for this evening's session is justice, equity, and fairness as key ingredients for transformation. I'm sure that you will join me in acknowledging that at this time in our country, there could not be a more appropriate theme for us to be reflecting on and really challenging ourselves with regards to, given everything that is currently going on in the country at the moment. So we hope that this session will be an opportunity for us to reflect, to stand back and really apply ourselves to what justice, equity, and fairness mean for our society, and whether or not those key ingredients are evident in the country that is South Africa today. To start us off this evening, I have the privilege and pleasure of welcoming the chairman of the Dr Ndlovu Trust, Family Trust, and that is Prof. Ndlovu. Prof. Ndlovu, we welcome you this evening, and we look forward to hearing your opening remarks. It is absolutely relevant at a time like this that leaders such as yourself are applying and adding their voices to the conversation, and we look forward to your remarks this evening, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, Program Director, the President of the Black Management Forum, and the leadership of the Black Management Forum, past presidents, and all the members of BMF and friends who are present this evening. It's really a singular honor for me and privilege in my capacity as chairman of Dr Ndlovu Legacy Trust to welcome you this evening. In particular, to be welcoming Professor Thuli Madonsela, who is going to deliver the annual Dr Ndlovu lecture. We're exceptionally pleased to have her as our guest. Colleagues, I am going to touch on things that you know, but it's important that we just remind ourselves that we decided to honor Dr Ndlovu in this way because of his unique contribution, which the past presidents have already referred to, but his unique contribution of really rebuilding BMF in the early 90s. Actually giving up employment to come and rebuild the organization. I came in at that time to become president of BMF, and I worked with him, who was chief executive at the time, in actually rebuilding the organization and actually engaging the government, the first democratic government, on the issues around the advancement of Black managers, as well as economic are not left on the periphery, and we democratize and take political leadership of the country, but they are left on the periphery of the economy. That was the crux of the matter. And also we wanted to make sure that Black people are not left on the periphery when it comes to decision making, both in government and in the private sector. So that was a thrust of our advocacy at the time. But Professor Thuli Madonsela, you are addressing now the BMF at a very difficult time. We worked very hard, our leaders, to whom we are very grateful as the current generation. They did their best to make sure that the country adopts a constitution that draws wisdom from all over the world, which is really recognized as one of the most progressive constitutions in terms of not drawing only from the Code of Napoleon or the Constitution of the United States, but also from Karl Marx and also from our own traditions of Ubuntu. That constitution, you know, is a reflection of all those aspirations. It was known at the time that we were saying to the world, we aspire to be this great country that is commitment to equality, freedom, and respect of the dignity of all. And in doing so, we committed ourselves to the great ideals and principles and values that are in our constitution. The difficult situation in which we find ourselves today is that as South Africans, especially us as professionals, we are failing to live to those principles and values. We're stealing from our people, we're killing our women, we are really trashing on the dignity of the most vulnerable in our country. We as the elite, as members of BMF, we need a deep introspection and soul searching. So really we look forward to your views this evening to really share with us from your own research, from your own experiences as a leader, as to what is it that we must really address, what responsibility and accountability that we must accept as the Black elite, especially as the educated elite that really forms the membership of BMF. On my side, I'm really disappointed and also ashamed of what I read in the papers about the failure of us as the elite to make sure that the dignity of each and everyone in South Africa is protected, and that the lives of our women and children are protected, and above all, the fact that the resources that are entrusted to us, both in the public sector and the private sector, are not used to the best advantage of our citizens. All this is happening under our leadership. We hope really your ideas this day will help us grapple with these things and find some ways of dealing with them. And in the process, I hope we'll also do serious introspection about our roles, the roles that we fulfill in the spaces that we occupy. It's really my pleasure to welcome you, and I'm very grateful that you have agreed to address us this evening. I look forward to your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof, for those challenging remarks that you have laid at our feet. Prof, for those of you who may not remember, is the 6th president of the BMF who served his tenure immediately before the stalwart that we are honoring tonight in this lecture series. It is really important, as the Prof has said, for us all to consider and reflect upon what the role of those of us who happen to be privileged in society is as it relates to carrying the plight of the nation. I was fascinated in reflecting recently on the difficulties that the Prof referred to that we're currently facing as a nation And in my reflections, realized that there perhaps has not been a time, at least in recent history, that we have not been facing difficult times. So as a nation, one may consider us to have somewhat of a PhD in difficulty, but this is our opportunity to really apply what that means, particularly in this situation that requires so much of us. So thank you very much, Prof, for those remarks, and we honor you and appreciate your contribution, particularly to a series as significant as this. I want to take this opportunity to welcome our next speaker, who will also be delivering her remarks. Our next speaker is a speaker who requires real introduction and is a member of Corporate South Africa who is par excellence. It is Mam Shirley Machaba, who is the CEO of PwC Southern Africa. Mam Shirley's accolades and recognitions are numerous, or rather should I say too numerous for us to count this evening, but she has recently, as many of you would know, been recognized for much of the work that she is doing as part of driving the Performance and Transformation Initiative within PwC. So Mam Shirley, we acknowledge you as our sponsor this evening. We thank you for your contribution to this work, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts as we continue to reflect and introspect, in the words of Prof. Ndlovu. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Program Director, for such a brief introduction. To the Dr Ndlovu family, Professor Wiseman Nkutlu, Prof. Thuli Madonsela, BMF President, all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is once again my pleasure to welcome you to the 7th annual Dr Ndlovu lecture, presented by a combination of Maduke Dr Ndlovu Legacy Trust in partnership with the Black Management Forum, and proudly hosted by PwC. At this point, I usually also welcome you to our PwC Waterfall building, but this year, COVID-19 had other plans for us. It is a sign of our resilience, determinations, and ability to adapt that we are still able to celebrate this auspicious occasion, albeit remotely this year. On behalf of PwC Southern Africa, it remains a pleasure and a privilege to welcome you all. Looking at today's speaker lineup, I'm in stellar company. We have just listened to the welcome by Prof. Wiseman Nkutlu, the Trust Chairperson. Prof. Nkutlu has a long history with PwC, or rather its predecessor firms. As the first Black African to qualify as a chartered accountant in South Africa, Prof is one of the true pioneers of the profession in our country, with an unwavering commitment to education and to developing young Black CAs in South Africa. Most recently, as Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, he has been included in a list of the 100 most reputable Africans. A commendable achievement indeed. Congratulations to Prof. Our keynote speaker, Prof. Thuli Madonsela, also no stranger to me and to everyone. To those who don't know, she is my former colleague, and I've been privileged to speak on other panels alongside her. And I'm always struck by her commitment to good governance and ethical behavior. I'm certainly looking forward to today's address. I'm also always struck by how the themes of this annual lecture resonate so well with PwC, our values and our purpose. This year's theme of justice, equity, and fairness as key ingredients for transformation is no different. It's no secret that our country has its fair share of challenges. It's up to organizations such as BMF and PwC to demonstrate the leadership, values, and vision that will help us navigate these waters. It is when issues are ignored and values and ethical behaviors absent that opportunities are squandered to the detriment of growth and empowerment. That is why at PwC we base everything on our purpose of building trust in society and solving important problems. And the strong foundation of our 5 core values, which are making a difference, care, work together, reimagine the possible, and act with integrity. These values are what our culture is based on and are expected from each of our people every day. Transformation, diversity, and inclusion are all integral to the PwC culture and close to my heart indeed. At PwC, our livelihood is dependent upon a diverse set of talented people. This perspective is crucial and is behind our firm's drive globally and locally to ensure that everyone has the opportunity at PwC to build a rewarding career in top leadership positions and heading up some of our key client engagements. We provide the tools and flexibility to make this a reality, and the statistics show how we are reaping the rewards. We also know we make this a reality, and the statistics, as I said, are showing how we are reaping the rewards. Our strategic intent is to achieve 40% Black ownership and 30% female ownership by 2022. And how do we do that? You all know that it can be good to have a plan, but if we don't implement, it's no reaching any objective. To achieve that, we have developed a 10-point plan. We call it a transformation plan, supported by an activation program. All of our partners are aware of this, and their KPIs include transformation and gender equality specific KPIs. Progress on this plan is monitored regularly by both our leadership team and the board. Transformation, as you know, takes many forms, one of which is gender equality, and more so now in Women's Month. Across Africa, the diversity and inclusion space is not without challenges. Our stats are telling us that we are making strong progress, but we can improve. Whilst a lot has changed over the years on our continent, gender equality is an area in which we, like the rest of the world, can improve. At PwC, we don't only limit this to our own people. We have a lot of programs. Our latest Faranani Rural Women's Training Program graduation just took place yesterday. I'm the National Director for that program, with another 27 rural women graduating with the business skills needed to empower them to contribute to the South African economy. By end of 2019, we had 3,659 women that has gone through the program, and another 325 women will have completed their training by the end of 2020. We all understand that SMME is the nerve center of the economy, hence we are having this program. Ladies and gentlemen, as we evolve our businesses, there is no playbook to guide us. This is the perfect opportunity for us to create an inclusive playbook that drives real progress within our organizations and in our society. Coming back to the theme for this event, justice, equity, and fairness are all business imperatives, and more so when used in the context of transformation. When people stand up together and are counted and become involved in being part of the solution, the outcomes will be favorable. I really commit that PwC will play its part in supporting this process. Those who are on this call from PwC, they will know that I'm not just saying it, I mean it. Thank you very much, Program Director. And I wish we will be empowered with the speakers tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mam Shirley, for those remarks. I want to remind everyone on the call that Mam Shirley was most recently recognized by the South African Professional Services Organization as being the South African Professional of the Year. And that is an accolade that adds to the long line of achievements that she has already got under her belt. And so her commitments that she has made both to the leadership team within PwC and has made as it relates to transformation and the contribution that the group will be making to this effort are those that are sound, but also can be attested to by the solid nature of the leadership that she has displayed and the recognition that she has received for that leadership. So, Mam Shirley, in the month of August, as a Mbogodo of note, we salute you and we thank you for your remarks as well as your ongoing and continued support of both the Legacy Trust and the BMF, we thank you. At this particular point in time, I want to take the opportunity to remind everyone that for those of you that are seeking to get a few more nuggets of wisdom regarding who exactly the late Manduke Lot Ndlovu was, the book Lot Speaks is available. It is available, and you are welcome to reach out to our colleagues at the BMF, and they will be able to ensure that you receive a copy. If you are interested in making a purchase, kindly email bmfcommunications@bmfonline.co.za. That information is also available on the invitation to the session. An incredible read about an incredible man. We have an opportunity now to reflect a little bit more on his work and some of his contributions both to the country and to the structures on which he served. In preparing for the session, I had an opportunity to revisit this book, which is one of my transformation favorites. And what stuck out was the repetition of the word fearless in the description of his leadership. A fearless and thoughtful leader is what Prof Ndlovu refers to him in the foreword as, and the overall summary really from the participants that were asked to reflect on their time and their work with him, refer to him as a leader of ethical courage. I think at this particular point in the conversation, but also in our journey as a country, the fearlessness and the relevance of ethical courage are important for us to be able to reflect on as we continue this conversation. So I'm going to request that those of us who are assisting us on the tech side load the video and give us an opportunity to see in and the leader that was Mr. Dr Ndlovu. I hope that you all realize the commitment that he shared in that video to workers and workers' rights. If you have the opportunity to read the book, which again I would strongly encourage, you realize how passionate he was about that work. I reflect quite fondly on one of the memories shared in the book about how he happened to plan an end-of-year party for some workers at a mine that he happened to be working at. And it seemed that the management found the level of festivity and celebration somewhat unpalatable, and the outcome of it led to quite a significant career change for Ubaba Ukatsheni. So for those of you that do have the opportunity to plan such celebrations, please do be inspired and make a conscious effort to balance the happiness of the workers and the happiness of the management, but really great zeal and great commitment shown there by Ubaba Ukatsheni in that regard, and just very symbolic of the deep and sincere commitment that he had to improving the lives of regular everyday South Africans. A real pleasure to read that in the memoir, and I really hope that you will make time to give yourself that opportunity. We are getting to the point in this evening where we will hear from our keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker here tonight, again, as we have said already, is Prof. Thuli Madonsela. She will deliver the 7th annual Dr Ndlovu lecture, which is symbolic given the fact that he was the 7th president of the BMF. If you believe in science, perhaps you may find some interesting correlations in that space. Again, I encourage you to continue to reflect on this idea of fearlessness and courageous ethical leadership. In preparing, of course, to introduce a guest speaker as decorated and established as Prof. Madonsela, one often doesn't know where to start. And so between Monde and myself, we had a number of conversations about how one might attempt to do justice to such an introduction. And I reflected quite a bit on this and came to thinking about the memoir that she has written, No Longer Whispering Power, and thought again of the remarkable significance of the courage shown in that statement, no longer whispering to power, and tied that back to this theme of courageous ethical leadership as well as fearlessness that is spoken about in describing the work, the contribution, and the commitment of Ubaba Ukatsheni. And so we find it incredibly fitting tonight to welcome the Prof to deliver the 7th annual lecture. The Prof needs no introduction at all. Many of you will remember her well from her tenure as the Public Protector of South Africa, in which she did a phenomenal job. I think many in the country were not even aware of the office and the role of the Public Protector until she took office, again, showing and demonstrating to all the significance of no longer whispering to power, and really revealing how important it is to convey ethical leadership in this country and to demonstrate it with courage and without fear. She has since moved on from being the Public Protector, but remains an advocate of the High Court of South Africa, being a very decorated advocate at that. The Prof, in her current capacity, is now at the University of Stellenbosch, who is fortunate enough to have her as the chair of social justice research. And she spends her days, we imagine, comfortably conducting research, but also speaking in forums such as these and reflecting on the needs of a country such as ours in this particular term. Prof, again, we cannot overstate how lucky and fortunate we are to have you with us tonight. No one in recent times who has occupied the Office of the Public Protector has quite so efficiently demonstrated the very ingredients we are discussing tonight, those of justice, equity, and fairness. And so we look forward to not only hearing your voice once again, as you are now missed on the public platforms as much as we used to see you in your days speaking and no longer whispering to power. But we also look forward to your reflections on what this means for us, not only as South Africans, but what it means for us as citizens of the world at a time such as this. So, Prof, with those words, I welcome you and invite you to deliver for us the 7th annual Dr Ndlovu Lecture.
Thank you, Mandisa, for that very kind introduction. I must just, for the sake of completeness and avoiding intellectual theft, indicate that the biography, No Longer Whispering to Power, was written by a friend and a highly decorated professional, Thandeka Qubule. Greetings to all colleagues in this room, but a special greeting and word of gratitude to the family, to the Ndlovu family, the leadership of the BMF, and the leadership of our host, Shelly Mashaba, and her team. It is gratifying to participate in an event where we honor those who came before us, especially if those who came before us left us a legacy of hope and stepping stones for making things even better for ourselves and the next generation. The commemoration of one of South Africa's treasured sons is particularly heartwarming as we face the defining moment of our nation, brought about by the coronavirus, COVID-19. Though the coronavirus, COVID-19, is a global attack, in our case, it represents a compounded challenge because our country already had ailings or what you could refer to as socioeconomic comorbidities. And these were already tearing the fabric of our society. Among these comorbidities would be social, economic, and political challenges, such as acute levels of poverty and inequality, which are also growing, corruption, which my colleagues have mentioned, and just declining levels of integrity, acute levels of gender-based violence, and growing levels of social intolerance. When a flower dies, the scent endures beyond its life. So does a life well lived. You can be snuffed like a candle in the wind, as many of our people have been snuffed by the coronavirus, COVID-19, in recent months. But if you lived a life well lived, your life imprint continues to endure beyond your life and shapes the destiny of humanity for years to come. Firstly, I just want to say heartfelt condolences to those that have lost loved ones due to the coronavirus, COVID-19. Dr Ndlovu, who departed this world 7 years ago did so too soon. You will agree with me, though, that his life was a life well lived. Just our coming together today across political parties, across regions, and beyond his family and friends, shows that he left a legacy that is worth celebrating and examination. There are many dimensions to Lord Ndlovu's contribution to our lives. One of them is being the BMF president from 1995 to 1999. My lecture focuses on justice, equity, and fairness as key ingredients for transformation. These are principles that Lord Ndlovu lived by. You heard that in the video that we listened to earlier today. Justice, equity, and fairness are the reasons for him being one of the founders of the Black Management Forum, through which he and his contemporaries called for the inclusion of Black managers and economic empowerment of Black people, women, and others that had been excluded during colonialism and apartheid. He also led from the front in lifting others whilst rising. This is the platform through which I met him, having been invited by a colleague, Mpho Makwana, to speak about affirmative action at one of the early BMF events. Lord Ndlovu led from the front as an executive at Nedbank and in the formation of the African Bank with regard to lifting as you rise. I'm certain there are many people in this very virtual room that have stories about how he lifted them, either through mentorship or sponsorship. His advocacy for Black and women inclusion and diversification of the economy and workplaces is well known, and we just heard right now about the book. And I would encourage all young people in particular to read that book, especially because millennials, or some millennials, tend to think that the generations before them, which is my generation and Mandela's generation, lost the plot. I'll talk a little bit later about what was achieved. I felt privileged to be part of this memorial lecture because I feel there is some resonance between what Lord Ndlovu stood for and my own life in the pursuit of justice, fairness, and equity. For as long as I can remember, life has been about the pursuit of social justice, whether as a trade unionist, a civic leader, an academic, and somebody in government, somebody in civil society, law commission, and as you know, as a pub protector. As a pub protector, a lot of people would only think about what I did in pursuit of the corrupt and unethical. And the truth is, even that was about equity, because corruption undermines equality. It undermines fairness, and it is certainly unjust. If we say Lord Ndlovu stood for fairness, equity, and justice, what does this entail, broadly speaking, together? In my view, this is a package about social justice. And that's something that I believe needs attention, particularly in the next decade in South Africa. What is social justice? Social justice is not socialism, as some have feared since the days of communism. Social justice is not a crusade against white, affluent, heterosexual male citizens of any country, as some people believe. It is also not justice as just us, as some people believe. You will note, for example, that others just think that poor people in the working class are there to be leveraged for primitive accumulation by a new elite. But it's not the first time that justice tends to be interpreted by some as just us. The very reason South Africa is the way it is because when the colonial governments wanted to solve the poor white problem, they thought the best thing was to dispossess Black people and have whites, particularly Afrikaners that were poor at the time, ride on the backs of Black people. And sadly, this was done particularly after 1932 on the basis of the recommendations of the Carnegie Report. So social justice is not just us, it's not about socialism. So what is it? Social justice, as we understand it at the chair of social justice at Stellenbosch University and the Tuma Foundation, is about embracing the humanity of everyone, as reflected in the just and fair distribution of all opportunities, benefits, privileges, resources, and burdens in society. Where there's social justice, there's equal enjoyment of all rights and freedoms. You must agree with me that shared humanity anchored in equitable distribution of what life offers informed the work of Dr Ndlovu. And that's what he dedicated his life to. What we also need to know is social justice is an important part of our constitutional promise. And our constitution is one of the few pioneering constitutions that entrench a commitment to social justice. Apart from our constitution, I only know India and a few other countries. If you read our constitution, for example, it talks about that we, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who worked to build and develop our country, and believe South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. Adopt this constitution so as to heal the divisions of the past. It is important to pay attention to the key words such as heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on social justice. Clearly, the expectation here is that the past left a shadow that needed to be addressed in order to build this new society based on social justice. Hence, the preamble talks to healing the divisions of the past. Something had to die in order for us to build the society envisaged in the Constitution. The question I would like to ask you, dear colleague, is, are we healed? Are we in a united nation as envisaged in the Constitution? Are we a new society? If not, what stands in the way? My own research and my own lived experience shows that whilst today is better than yesterday, the healing of our nation remains work in progress. Sometimes I even feel like it's work in regression. It seems to me that our race relations are fragile, and so are our gender relations. You heard our colleague, Professor Ndlovu, talking about gender-based violence, and so did my colleague, Shirley Mashaba. It has become a war zone in families for girls, young women, and grandmothers. This war zone follows them into public spaces and the workplace. If I reflect on us presenting the Beijing +10 report in New York, I have a feeling that the levels of violence against women have multiplied instead of diminished. Regarding race, which is something that Dr Ndlovu felt passionate about, race has become common for politicians, including those that took the oath to uphold the Constitution, to openly shut people's voices down by simply drawing attention to their race. If you're on Twitter, you probably feel the vibes. There's an invisible wall between the descendants of the natives of this country and the descendants of those that settled as part of colonialism. The Bell Pottinger invented white monopoly capital campaign and radical economic empowerment campaigns are enduring beyond the life of the Gupta commissioned public relations stunt. But the reason this campaign is enduring is because it hit a chord with the people that are left behind. Many would like us to believe that our nation had healed or was on the road to healing until Bell Pottinger divided us. The truth is something else. My experience as a public protector, and through the research we're doing at Stellenbosch University and the Tuma Foundation, has led me to conclude that it was precisely because we were not healing fast enough that it was possible for that campaign, the Bell Pottinger campaign, to gain traction. At the core of our healing troubles, I believe, is the fact that we have made deplorable progress on social justice. According to the World Bank and our own statistics, South Africa, we are one of the most unequal societies in the world. Some actually say we are the most unequal society in the world, which is measured in terms of the Gini coefficient. The gap between the rich and the poor in this country is not only obscene, it also keeps widening. Despite the fact that we are Africa's most developed economy and a competitive player in the global economy, more than half of the people of South Africa are poor. Statistics South Africa estimated poverty across all groups at 55.5% before COVID-19. Among those classified by law as African, Stats SA estimated poverty at 64.2% before COVID-19. Unemployment was around 30% before COVID-19. And if you add the NEETs, it was about 40%. Youth unemployment was at about 50%, Again, if you add the needs, not in employment, education, or training, it was at about 70%. This was all happening 5 months ago, starts based on everything that happened before the lockdown in March. You and me should be concerned about what does the picture look like now, given the fact that in order to save lives, livelihoods have been disrupted, and the families that were anchoring individual resilience have also been disrupted through the lockdown and other efforts that were aimed at protecting us from the coronavirus, COVID-19. Some studies already are showing that the impact of the lockdown is more jobs lost and more companies closing down and challenges with food security. I attended an event recently on corruption where a lady was practically shouting out of anger because of hunger in her community. And I could understand it because every day I receive a request from somebody who says they're hungry. They haven't received the food parcels. They don't have data and they can't engage. Or they don't have money to pay rent, even though government said you can't be evicted. Landlords are evicting people because they also need the income so that they can continue with their own lives. So COVID-19 has made things worse and increased our vulnerabilities in terms of poverty, unemployment, hunger, and ultimately inequality. Dear colleagues, what have we been doing wrong? I have said today is better than yesterday. I would say to you, there are 7 fault lines that keep coming up when we are looking at the progress we should be making in creating a society where there is justice for all, equity and fairness in all areas of society, from the family to the workplace and right through to the political landscape. The 7 fault lines are the following. One is we seem to be lacking a shared understanding of the legacy of apartheid, patriarchy, and related injustices. Some of us understand that legacy differently from others, and that creates dissonance. There doesn't seem to be a shared vision of what South Africa should look like when it has become a socially just country where there's shared prosperity. This is regardless of the fact that the preamble to the Constitution seems to be clear that that new society would be a society where there's a better life for everyone, where everyone's potential is freed, but more than anything else, where there is equality in all areas of life, not just equality in terms of jobs for some, equality in terms of ownership of land, equality in terms of ownership of factories, equality in terms of access to medical care, just equality in all areas of life. But there seems to be a difference in understanding what does the South Africa we want look like. 3, we seem not to be agreed on what are the effective pathways towards achieving the South Africa we want. 4, I find that there's inadequate systems thinking and ecosystems thinking in our planning. For example, if we want progress in the employment sector, we seem to think that we can make progress in the employment sector without progress in the rest of the economy, spatial disparities, transport, access to finance and things like that. There seems to be that transactional and sectoral focus. There's also inadequate leveraging of data analytics for social impact conscious policy planning and legislation design. I also think that our planning is not attuned to the achievement of sustainable development goals. 6, our work as pub protector and now doing work as part of the Tuma Foundation increasingly finds that our leadership could be more ethical, more purpose-driven, impact-conscious, and committed to serve everyone, not just the people who vote for the leaders, but everyone. And again, the food parcels is one example in terms of priorities for giving food. But finally, there's inadequate accountability. Accountability corruption, for accountability for service delivery, ineptitude, accountability for policy ineptitude. You could mention a lot. I'm just going to discuss only two of these in extensive terms. The first one is the shared understanding of the past and its shadow. There does seem to be either the denial of the shadow of the past or leveraging the past too much to explain current inadequacies. Those who deny the past, the legacy of the past, say that the inequalities we have now, poverty, hunger, and all of the social justice problems that we have today cannot be attributed to the past. They say blame that on ineptitude in governance in areas such as education, etc., energy, etc. And they also say that we have to blame everything on corruption. Those who leverage the past too much blame everything on apartheid and colonialism. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. There's no way that 26 years of democracy would have allowed us to deal with the legacy of more than 3 centuries of exploitation, exclusion, oppression, and just a racially extractive economy. It just couldn't have been done in 26 years. From the social justice chair, particularly in our work on the M plan for social justice, we also have found that it would have been impossible to finance change purely from the public purse, because the public purse still has to deal with day-to-day governance challenges, normal welfare. So we needed extra resources in the same way that it happened in the Europe Recovery Plan to move forward. When it comes to the shared vision of the South Africa we want, I think we need to do better on this one. Because if somebody says to me, for example, that to move forward, we need to give people education, just fix the education system and fix energy, and this country will be run. Open the economy and everyone is going to get jobs. I ask myself, is the problem only education, energy, and jobs? I don't think so. I think if we want a South Africa of equals, where there's peace because there's social justice, where there's progress because we're using all of the resources we have as an economy, then we should be looking at disrupting inequality in all areas of life: land, business ownership, residential, spatial disparities. The way we reside is still based on apartheid. Blacks as far away from the city as possible. Schools, infrastructure, bridges, even just access to the internet. Some rural areas, even if you have a cell phone, you can't have access because there's no connectivity. When they were looking at fixing the poor white problem, they firstly looked at what is the problem and what kind of society do they want, and then they adopted a systems approach to problem solving. And I think we need to do so. We have an opportunity with the COVID-19 situation in that we can look at what exactly should South Africa look like in 2030, 2040, and 2050, let's say in the next 30 years. And then begin to say, what steps do we need to take with the limited time we have and the resources we have to march towards that? I honestly do believe that when the visions differ, we will not be able to agree on the pathways that need to be taken. Just take an example of people who are on a journey. One thinks we're going to Cape Town, one thinks we're going to Uppington, another thinks we're going to Emalahleni, whilst another thinks we're going to Bulugwane. Think about how much disagreement will take place about mode of transport, what to take on the journey, what not to take, how many people to include on the journey. There will be no agreement. When a common vision has not been clarified to each traveler, their preferred route is the right way. Well, to each traveler, their preferred route is the right way. So if you can't agree regarding where we're going, we are going to disagree on how we're getting there. And we have an opportunity, dear colleagues, now that we're dealing with the COVID-19 recovery program. We also have an opportunity being part of BRICS to learn from China about how do you design based on outcomes. We have to dream, what does South Africa look like when we've arrived? What does each village look like? If we're talking about fairness, yes, I understand we need fairness, gender fairness in the workplace, equity in the workplace, in the economy, etc. But the biggest challenge for me, dear colleagues, around justice, fairness, and equity is geographical discrimination. If we don't go with a ward-based system, many wards, many districts are being left behind. I do hope that one day when the president gives us the State of the Nation address, he will tell us how far are we with the constitutional promise of healing the divisions of the past and establishing a society that is based on social justice, democratic values, and human rights. And he will tell us not just a generic picture, he will give us a word-by-word account. How are we doing in the 4,392 wards? Because if we say, leave no one behind, then we have to find out where is everyone. And one of the things that we think needs to be done is use disaggregated data for planning. Just lastly, we do need to improve accountability. And we do need to improve leadership. I don't want to overemphasize that. And accountability is not just for corruption. Yes, we want accountability for corruption. We want people to go to jail. We want people to pay back the money. But there should also be accountability for non-delivery. Far too many people promise people toilets and build just the foundation, and there are no consequences. That on its own is unfair, unjust, and inequitable. And at the level of leadership, if we can improve on the kind of leadership that Dr Ndlovu exhibited, we certainly could improve on delivery. And that leadership is leadership that is ethical, purpose-driven, impact-conscious, and committed to self. I do think, though, that the future looks better because COVID-19 has given us new eyes to see things that have already been there and to remember the dream that brought us here. Memory is important because it gives you the basis for understanding where you are and where you need to go. Lot and his contemporaries laid a firm foundation, and to them, we must further remember their dream and be faithful to it. We must reflect honestly on where we are in the pursuit of that socially just country where there's shared prosperity. We must then take the baton and move with it. I know we can do this because we stand on the shoulders of giants, in addition to having a vibrant crop of young leaders, as those in this room, that will take our shared prosperity quest forward with deliberate speed. Let me leave you with the words of one of South Africa's giants, Steve Bantubonke Biko, in a book by Wendy Lehabe titled Defining Moments, Steve Biko said, "We believe that in the long run, the special contribution to the world by Africa will be in the field of human relationships. The great powers of the world may have done wonders in giving the world an industrial and military look. But the great gift still has to come from Africa, giving the world a more human face." I do think that if we pursue Dr Ndlovu's dream of a world that is just for everyone, fair to everyone, and equitable to everyone, we will truly be leaders in giving the world a human face. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Prof, for those remarks. You've left us with a huge, huge, huge accountability in the sense that we need to give the world a human face. Thank you for those reflections and thank you for those remarks. I was scribbling notes down furiously. And I think that when we convene next year for the 8th Memorial Lecture, we'll have to hold ourselves accountable to the 7 fault lines that you've highlighted in delivering this lecture. And we hope that when we check ourselves against how we've performed thus far, we'll see a remarkable improvement in our own contribution and in our own ability to make the difference and the positive impact that you've referred to. And most importantly, in our contribution to giving the world a more human face. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
One of the quotes I'm definitely taking from these remarks is the fact that corruption undermines equity, undermines fairness, and it certainly undermines justice. So many nuggets that the Prof has given us this evening, and I hope you'll all take them away and consider them. The last point around accountability becomes so important because sometimes when we think about accountability, we think about a phenomenon that's happening out there. We think about it in the context of corruption and wrongdoing. But as the Prof has challenged us, rightly so this evening, we also need to consider it in the context of service delivery and ensuring that we make an impact wherever we are. So I'm not sure what line of business or what trade you may be in, but let's hold ourselves accountable to deliver. And to deliver is really to ensure that we answer to the commitments that we've made and the commitments that we've put, that have been set before us. I also liked the reference that Prof made to the life lived by our honoree this evening. She said it was a life well lived, a leader who led from the front. And we're going to have an opportunity once again with the assistance of our tech support team to have a look at that life well lived, that life that led from the front as we continue to salute Ubaba Gajeni. So tech support, if you'll cue that for us, we'll very much appreciate it.
I'm going to cover 10 points very quickly without elaborating on them. We'll produce world-class organizations and a world-class economy. So we have to concentrate in our environment on issues of equity if we want to be world-class. Number 2, we must detribalize and embrace a world view without losing specific essential traditional values. There is a cultural immigration that we must go through, and we were advised that we cannot afford to be slow as we do so. A quantum leap has to be undertaken in this cultural migration. We must detribalize, embrace a worldview without losing the essentials of our traditions. And we're warned that tribalization is rearing its ugly head in this society, specifically with reference to African brothers from north of us here. Thirdly, that the government's economic policy framework here, growth, employment and redistribution, seeks to achieve higher levels of growth and a containment of unemployment as objectives, but that we should see GEAR as the sharp end of the Reconstruction and Development Program. In other words, in GEAR, we should address questions of poverty and inequality. Fourthly, that the successful achievement of affirmative action objectives requires a new activism, that we ought to be activists in the area of affirmative action and consciously resist and debunk some of the new social constructs that are developing, which may have the net effect of victimizing the disadvantaged people for the second time. And some of these stereotypes we ourselves are beginning to accept. And I don't want to go back to some of them which have been, in fact, confirmed by some of the speakers even here, in terms of the assessment of the dynamics in the workplace, saying things which are critical of black people, which some of us have begun to accept, which really have to be questioned. But we'll move on and look for another opportunity some other day. Fifthly, that the lack of responsiveness and caring in the economy will hinder productivity levels, that this economy is rather too jarred, too sharp, too irresponsive to the needs of the people. And we need to soften the kind of economy that we have if we're going to have any chance at all of raising levels of productivity and performance, therefore profitability of our organizations. 6, that the state should use the resources and processes at its disposal, such as the tendering process for development in terms of managerial development and skills development, leading to true ownership and true black economic empowerment, which must be underpinned by equity and participation by those that are involved, with specific reference to women. 7, that we need to revolutionize the education system in line with the demands and the needs of our economy, and seek to create a balance, a healthy balance between the intellectual needs of the society and the technical needs or economic needs of our economy, of our society. 8, that technological advances and progress, whether it's in the area of IT, information technology or telecommunications, advances in these areas, as we embrace them, we must be in a position to contextualize them and understand and determine the extent to which they will impact positively on the whole society, bearing in mind the possibility of these advances marginalizing those sectors of the society that are vulnerable. 9, that the economy will not grow at a sustainable rate if we do not shed the ad hoc attitude that we have towards people development and skills development in the areas that count and are core to the running of the economy. That the individuals who fill these roles that are core and count in the running of the economy must adopt a transformational attitude and agenda. 10, that there are two main key challenges that face this economy, is to be a world-class economy with a full understanding of our own wealth, our own conditions, underpinned by equity. And secondly, that we have a higher responsibility to redeem the African continent as we seek to be a world-class player. And this necessitates the restructuring of our attitude towards our neighbors in the region and in Africa as a whole. The BMF should champion black economic empowerment as a concept and as a cause, to the same extent, without suggesting that it has achieved at that level, to the same extent and more as it did in the area of affirmative action. And that we will define into black economic empowerment the understanding that we have of affirmative action, and this has been elaborated on, and the BMF is a notable sort of protagonist of a particular view, and is generally understood. And that this black economic empowerment that we must champion has to do with accessing and controlling capacity and capital for individuals, for companies as SMMEs, and for companies as major companies, including what is called black chips, these companies that are listed on the stock exchange. In other words, the spread would be that wide. And that there are 5 areas that would require specific attention in fulfillment of this cause. And this is the area of training and development, which is skills, the area of equity participation, which is the ownership of shares within companies. It is the area of joint ventures, the area of outsourcing and subcontracting, and lastly, the area of changing the management profile, which is the area that the Black Management Forum has been concentrating on. And that it is in all these areas that specific policies by government and specific interventions and programs by the private sector must be undertaken, which embrace the setting of targets in all these areas. So this is the resolution that has come out here. Secondly, and the last one, is that the BMF must establish a portfolio, a research and economics portfolio, which will serve the purpose of liaising with government and pronouncing, after having undertaken some well thought out work and assignments, even of a research and analysis nature, and comment on current developments and current issues, and provide that needed linkage with the public sector, with government in particular. Ladies and gentlemen, I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ubabugajeni was clearly an orator, described by many as a sharp mind, and as we've said, an ethical and courageous leader. We have the opportunity at this particular point in our program this evening to welcome the son of Ubabugajeni and a member of the family who comes up this evening to represent the family, but also the Madonsela Ndlovu Legacy Trust. That representative of the family is Mr. Monde Ndlovu. So Monde, we'd like to invite you to deliver remarks on behalf of the family this evening.
Very good evening to you. Thank you, Madam Host, Program Director Madonsela Matobela. Kind greetings and warm greetings to the President of the BMF, the Deputy President of the BMF, the Chair of the Madonsela Ndlovu Legacy Trust, fellow trustee, Mr. Mngwane Mthunzi, PwC sponsor Mamsheli Machaba, BMF stalwarts, BMF board members, former managing directors of the BMF, stalwarts of the organization, and our key guest this evening, keynote speaker, Professor Thuli Madonsela, and my beloved family. A very good evening to you all. I must first give a clear disclaimer. I tried to persuade my siblings to do this. I mentioned it last year that they should do a family reply from henceforth. And again, I'm the last born, and so it was not easy to persuade them, but I did my best, and I'm hoping that next year they will take up the responsibility to give a few remarks. And so I must just make that clear that I made that commitment last year. I failed in it, and I'll try again to persuade them, and hopefully they will also share their views and also represent the family. Professor Ngushu also made it clear that we should not speak for too long, so we only gave other speakers 5 minutes. I'll just have 2 points in honor of Prof. Ngushu's request. The first point is that leadership is imperative. Leadership is imperative. Also looking at the theme for tonight, which is very crucial, which not only was the theme of our father's life, but in effect became the ethos and is the ethos, continued ethos of the Black Management Forum, justice, equity, and fairness. It drives everything, but leadership is key. And he was so passionate about leadership. So I believe that we need more leadership and not less leadership, and that South Africa deserves a leadership that is obsessed with its development and quality performance, a leadership that draws strength from its past leaders and paves the way for future leaders. Ethical leadership teaches us that our personal internal alignment is paramount to our collective success. Transformation is of national importance and of personal configuration. There are people who claim to be for transformation in their articulation, but they are inwardly misaligned to that which they profess. And that is why there's been a lot more slow progress, especially among the Black leaders and the Black elite, which Prof. Kushu was speaking about. There is heavy articulation out there by Black leaders, but misalignment to that articulation, a misalignment of their configuration. So you've got to be personally transformed. So this personal configuration is driven also by a good set of social values that aims to uplift the downtrodden and maintain a high level of quality outcomes. So ethics and outcomes should be the theme of the day. It should be the theme of the time. It should be the theme of this age, like it was a theme of our father's life. So the soul of leadership must return. It must surely return. It shall return when core good social values coupled with ethics and outcomes are the center again. And my last point, and I'll start with a quotation from my father's book. The chapter is the role of the Black middle class. And I quote, "Suitability for leadership is not only determined by rules, by laws and courts, but by judgment and by conduct, by circumstance and by circumspection, including perception." Quote, unquote. I'd like to call this Dr Ndlovu leadership model. And sometimes you'd call it the African model in some of his speeches when he speaks, but would like to call it the Dr Ndlovu leadership model. And he always used to like to use a spear and a shield to illustrate the kind of leadership that South Africa should have. A spear representing performance, a spear representing skill set, competence, effectiveness. The shield representing values, the shield representing principles, the shield also representing compassion, because you protect others with your shield as well. That is being compassionate. You can carry others on your shield. That is compassion and also judgment. It is my wish that this leadership model of Dr Ndlovu can actually begin to be ingrained in how we teach leadership out there. And we're not just saying this in vain, but there are things in line with the BMF that we are driving in terms of transformation, especially when it comes to teaching transformation at business schools. There's something that is being driven there. And we're adding this element that we should take Dr Ndlovu's leadership model and begin to teach it. Let it be ingrained. Let us talk about it. Let us share it. Let us drive it in honor of him. We thank you very much. And Professor Thuli Madonsela, my mother sends special greetings to you. She's very grateful and thankful that you took the time to come and share your wisdom, and for honoring her husband. My siblings as well also send special greetings to you, and also the leadership of the BMF, the leadership of the trust, for continuing to stay the course in honoring our father. We know, in fact, today, the 27th of August, was the day where we buried my father. But at the same time, we are resuscitating him. We are resurrecting him. So on the 27th, we buried him, but we're also bringing him back to life. And let us continue on this path and stay the course in honoring him, not just him, but many stalwarts of the BMF that have put the marker down in terms of the kind of leadership that South Africa deserves, that South Africa should develop within the BMF and in other formations. Madam Program Director, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Monde, for that passionate and powerful delivery. On behalf of all of those present tonight, I think it's important for us to acknowledge and thank the family for their contribution, not only in keeping the legacy alive, but also in ensuring that you shared your father with us and you were able to have the grace to allow the gift that he had to give to be shared really with all of those who had the privilege and pleasure of encountering him. So we thank you, we thank Mam Zanele, we thank your siblings and the entire family for that work. We know that Ubaba Kajeni is described as a devoted family man who really valued the connection of his family and the ability to ensure that he was investing not only outside of the family structure, but also within the family structure. My colleagues in the US would call you a chip off the old block, really. And I think for those who were watching carefully in the video before, I think we can truly say that as the years go by, Monde, the resemblance is becoming truly uncanny. So we look forward to seeing your siblings come through to deliver those remarks and seeing more of the character and the strength of your father displayed in each and every one of you. So thank you very much for sharing those remarks with us tonight. We are very much approaching the end of our program, but as we do that, it would also be improper of us to close without being able to hear from the current abiding president of the BMF, the 13th president of the BMF, that is Mr. Andile Nomlala. Mr. Nomlala, if I can request for you to also deliver and share your remarks this evening on behalf of the BMF, knowing very well the contribution made to the structure and the organization by the 7th president of the BMF, Ubaba Kajeni. Mr. Nomlala.
Thank you, Madam Program Director. And I'm actually going to abide to Prof. Nkulu's instructions, strict instructions. But before I do that, I will try to limit myself to literally the 5 minutes I'm given. But what is important, I want to firstly say thank you to Professor Nkulu for just keeping the legacy of Babulot, him being directly in charge of making sure that us as the second layer leadership that is emerging in the corridors of BMF House, we don't forget where we come from. We don't forget the legacy and the heritage that has been bequeathed to us by our past leaders. What is critical and what is important, and which is the culture that I've learned in the BMF, is that we lead and we lift as we rise. We are in an incubation process. We are being made to be the great leaders that you can see. I think everybody can have just heard Monde's articulation. Earlier today, we released an opinion piece that he had put forward for the BMF, which I asked him to write about the current discourse in our country. And the sum of the aspects of what he has articulated on that opinion piece are the telling and the defining moment. What BMF teaches us is that when the time like these ones, where there is crisis engulfing our country, those that can lead must show up. And what keeps me awake at night, and which is the saddest thing, is that the era or the people that of my generation, the young under 40s, are not there. We can not lie to ourselves, colleagues, to say that we have stood the test of time. If we can be half the men and women that Professor Madonsela herself at her junior years, Dr Ndlovu, Professor Nkulu, if we could be half of what they were during the times of struggle and just in the early years of our democracy, our country wouldn't be where it is today. I'm no longer in a position to be a leader that apportions blame to people. I think the failures of our country, colleagues, if you see the COVID-19, for instance, corruption crisis, if you hear the articulations of the Secretary General of the African National Congress, where he is unashamedly and doesn't see fault in the misnomer that the leadership that occupy highest political office must still be the ones that accumulate and derive and create opportunities for themselves and their immediate families. He doesn't see why that becomes a questionable matter. And in his position of not seeing why that becomes a questionable matter is an argument that everybody else has done it before. Why wouldn't we? But the reality of the matter is that those that have done it is what Professor Madonsela herself had tried, unfortunately, unsuccessfully, as the era now tells us, because we thought that corruption would go with the state capture. But the reality of the matter is that corruption seems to have been entrenched, and corruption is a pandemic itself. And my generation, myself included, even in the leadership of BMF, is that besides engaging, besides making public pronouncements, there is no action to our messages. There is no deliberate intervention to the crisis that we face. We can't, in this era and period, sit and completely bequeath the responsibility of what should be our country to others, whilst we know that we have many more years by virtue of our age to live. The reality of the matter is that if a shady character, and I'll be more precise, like a David Mabuza, if he didn't help us in 2017, we would be in a much more worse situation. But we thought that we are saved in that 2017 conference. But the reality is that we are not. We thought that Professor Madonsela's sterling performance as a public protector gives confidence to state institutions at any given point in time. But I can tell you now, as a BMF president, we interact with these heads of these Chapter 9 institutions and other critical state institutions. They are still in the doldrums that they were before the state capture or before the new dawn. In fact, the confidence of criminals and thieves has heightened in the last 24 months or so. Now, the question that comes is, what does Andile and his generation would be remembered by? Lord Ndlovu had left a legacy of defining the economic future that we want to have. He had created the framework and the template of our own economic prosperity. But what did we do when we came in? We became individualistic. We became all about ourselves. And even when we try to put a collective effort via leaders of our generations, like Julius Malema, we still lack the scrutiny of being above reproach. We don't have confidence that we would be able to emerge as great leaders without us having to be consumed by self-interests. Self-interest and the idea and the misnomer of not understanding collective development. As Professor Madonsela was just saying now, that we don't know, we haven't defined a common vision for our country. And if we don't lead and we don't follow a path that we all agree on, we will be as frivolous and distorted and literally an osmosis in the nucleus as we are today. We will be fragmented. We would be the defenders of corruption when we benefit. We will be against corruption when we are excluded. And us being against corruption has nothing to do with the principal matter of realizing that corruption doesn't help our country, but it would be only because I didn't get something out of it. So with those few words, I say that whenever I go to bed at night, I just ask myself, am I worthy of being a BMF president? Am I worthy to walk the path of the luminaries and stalwarts of Lord Ndlovu's character and caliber? And when I don't have answers to that, I ask the next friend to myself and say, but are you better? Are you in the path that can define and bring about economic freedom for our children, for generations to come? And when I find commonality between myself and the next friend, then I feel comforted that, well, I'm not alone. Like the SG of ANC says, they are not the only ones who are starting to use state resources to benefit themselves. With those few words, I would like to say thank you, Professor Madonsela, for agreeing to deliver a sterling lecture on behalf of our doyen, Babulot Ndlovu. I would like to say thank you to you, Professor Nkutlu, for steering the ship of the Lord Ndlovu Trust. And I would like to extend a word of gratitude as well to Mesheli for supporting the BMF for many years since we have been involved with you from Cape Town, now at national level. We are very pleased by your support. To Monde, you know that I had breakfast with you earlier this week, and I wouldn't extend the words that I've extended. I'm very proud of the young gentleman you're becoming, and I think that the BMF must just unleash you so that we have another Bralot in our stable, another Bralot that can make vibrating words and sounds that the walls that of power and the highest echelons of leadership in our country can listen to. Lastly, but not least, to you, Mandisa, you've always been a phone call away to the BMF. We really appreciate your work. We really appreciate that you are able to be part of us whenever we call upon you. I thank you all, colleagues, and have a great evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. That again was Andile Nomlala, the President, the 13th President of the BMF, delivering his passionate and powerful remarks there regarding where we are and where we find ourselves as a nation. We are running slightly over time, but I think you will agree with me to say that it has been worth it to be part of this evening's program, to be challenged in the way that we've been challenged, and also to reflect in the way that we've been encouraged to reflect this evening. There are so many nuggets coming through this evening, and I see from the chats as well that there are lots of acknowledgements coming through for all of our speakers and what they've shared. It has indeed been a quality evening in which we've been able to engage with really the cream of the crop as it relates to the leadership that we see in the country today. And so I want to join in the chorus of gratitude that has already been sung for all of our speakers this evening, starting of course with our keynote speaker, Prof. Thuli Madonsela, also Prof. Wiseman Ngushu, who has carried and continues to carry the baton. But I think the call has gone out tonight that they are in search of passing that baton on to others. Mamsheli Machaba, who continues to support both the development of professionals, but also to support initiatives such as the memorial lecture and also the incredible work of the BMF. So we thank and acknowledge all of our speakers this evening. We thank Monde as well for representing the Ndlovu family. At this point in time, I'm going to just request, as a Prof has already done, all of our speakers this evening to turn on their cameras for us to get a view of everyone together. And as we close, I'm going to take this opportunity, as it were, to just share with you, in fact, invite you to join with me a salute and a tribute to Ubaba Gajeni, as shared by the wise Prof Nkoshu in Lot Speaks. So if you would join me this evening, let us go ahead and salute. I just want to check that all my panelists can see me. When I say salute, I just need to see your hands. Where are your hands? Are your hands? Ah, there we go. Prof. Lead us. Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and read, and you know the cue. So it is salute Dr Ndlovu. Salute the man who calls a spade a shovel, who does not suffer fools gladly. Salute the achiever who gets things done. Salute the man who placed the BMF on a sound financial footing. Salute the leader who has a passion to do the right thing, who built the BMF. Salute to the man who is fearless and treads where angels fear. He is bold and innovative. He is sharp in mind. Salute to the vice president who became president and executive director of the BMF. Salute to the leader whose name and contribution will feature strong and clear when the history of the BMF is written. Salute to Lot Madonsela. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us tonight in honor and in recognition of the contribution that Ubaba Kajeni has made, not only to this country, but also to the continent, as he did allude to in his remarks, in saying that we need to ensure that we place this continent in the front and the center of the world economy. So we thank you for your remarks. We thank you for your challenges. We commit, Prof. Madonsela, that we will bring a human face to the world. And we thank everyone present here this evening for joining us in the 7th memorial lecture of Ubabu Maduke Lot Ndlovu. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.